Hey Pretty Girl Club, so today I'm going to be talking about how to become more snobbish. That's right, how to become more snooty, more snobby, more conceited, and to put yourself on the pedestal. If you're new here, welcome to Exotical land. By the way, shout out to the Exotic Brown Skin for coining that term. But I want to talk about being a snob, because usually whenever someone tries to gaslight you and call you a snob, what they really mean is you have standards, they mean that you have boundaries, it means that you are not afraid to go after what you want, and so people call you a snob in hopes that it will humble you. They're calling you a snob because they want you to change your behavior in order to prove to them that you don't think you're better. But here on the Diabolicals United YouTube channel, we are embracing all of our dark qualities. We are embracing the shadow side of ourselves because there's no such thing as a perfect person. There's no such thing as someone who never makes mistakes. There's no such thing as a person who doesn't have any bad qualities whatsoever. And so one of the ways that I've learned to navigate is to just embrace my flaws and to not try to bend over backwards and jump through hoops in order to prove something to someone who doesn't approve of me anyway. So that's rule number one of being a snob. It is you can't care about proving yourself to those who don't like you. It's like, okay, especially if you've already proven to me that you dislike me, I'm definitely not going to try to impress you now. I'm definitely not going to go out of my way to try to be extra nice. You know how people say, kill them with kindness. Here in the Diabolicals United community, we do not have to kill them with kindness. Yes, we have a nice side. I talk about some positive things on this channel about how to be a nice girl. But if you are tapping into your shadow side, if you're tapping into that diabolical nature, then no, I am no longer killing people with kindness who would not kill me with kindness. But the first thing that you have to remember about embracing your inner snob is that snobby girls, they have very high standards, okay? They're very selective. So they're not seen everywhere. They're not seen with anybody. They like to stay in these selective spaces. So one of the ways that I like to use snobbery to my advantage is when it comes to picking friendships. I mean, I have to be honest. I don't want to be friends with people who feel very negative about themselves or people who are like constantly complaining. They feel like they're at the bottom. Their life sucks. I don't want people around me who are going to drag me down. And I also don't want to be around people who are not leveling up themselves, because I guess the way I see it is I like to always be leveling myself up. I like to always be kind of social climbing. And when I say social climbing, what I really mean is having the social life that I've always wanted, or maybe growing in my socioeconomic status. And so I don't want to be around friends where they're trying to police everything I'm doing. They want me to try to prove that I'm still down with them. Think about that phrase. You need to prove you're down with me. What do you mean? I'm down with you? You mean I'm down at the bottom with you? That's literally what that phrase means. Oh, you're not really down for me like that. Yeah, what you mean is I'm not going to be there when you drive yourself into a ditch. I'm not going to be there at the bottom with you. What you're saying is I'm not going to be there next to you when you have destroyed your life and mine. And I'm not sorry for it. I'd rather be perceived as a snob than be perceived as being at the bottom. I would rather be perceived as thinking I'm better than be perceived as I'm competing with everybody else around me. So the thing about girls who are snobbish is they're also very self-centered in the sense that they're not viewing everybody as, oh, I have to compete with this girl over here. I have to compete with that person. No, they're very self-focused. So that's another tip on how to be a snob. It is to be very self-focused, to be self-centered in the sense that you don't have this extremely externalized self-esteem. You know those people that expect others to regulate their emotions for them? That's not good. The thing about snobs is that they come off as very unbothered. They're just minding their business. They're looking in the mirror. You know, they're living their pretty girl lifestyle. So they don't really have time to be hyper vigilant about managing other people's emotions. Like, it's not my job as a grown adult to manage your emotions, to manage your insecurities, to manage you comparing yourself to me. So that's just a snobby tip if you want to have a snobby girl summer. Another way that you can tap into your inner snob is by living a lifestyle that reflects the type of life you want to live. So one thing I've noticed is that the reason a lot of people are so desperate for relationships is because they are financially codependent. They are financially screwed, and they're hoping that a partner will come and save them from their financial woes. So I see a lot of guys doing this. They're hoping to find a wealthy woman to go 50-50 with, because then he gets to save more of his money and so he can spend it on his side chick. I see a lot of women doing this where they won't start their own businesses. They won't buy a house on their own. They're putting their financial future on hold in hopes that some guy will come in and fill up her 401k or fill up her retirement. So you're kind of waiting around for somebody else and you're kind of giving them the power. But when I think about a girl that's a snob, I think of a girl that is just, she's living her best life, whether there's a man in it or not. I think of a woman who is actually decentered from men, a woman who does not revolve her entire existence around a guy. So this is a girl who can just be carefree on her own. Maybe she comes from generational wealth, but if not, she knows how to do certain things to help build her wealth. She knows how to make boss moves. She knows how to make money moves so that she can live that snobby lifestyle that she's always wanted to live. Another way that you can try to become more snobby is by hanging out in social settings that fit your vibe. So, for example, I don't want to go to this raggedy bar where everybody's getting in fights all the time. I prefer to be in more of a luxury space. So that is something that you can tap into. Like, even if you don't have the money to do that, you can go on Groupon, you can find deals online so that you can still have more of a luxury experience, even if you don't quite have the financial ability to pay full price yet. But another thing about being a snob, though, is you have to be financially literate. Because think about it. If I want to live this snobby lifestyle and I want to walk around with these cute bags and shoes and stuff, I have to be financially literate so that I can build my wealth. I want to make sure my credit is good so that I can purchase my cute little condo or my penthouse. So that's another very important aspect of tapping into your inner snob. It's being financially literate. It is knowing how to build your credit, making sure that your credit utilization rate is low. By the way, your credit utilization rate should really be below 2%. I thought that it was like 30%, but no, you actually want your credit utilization rate to be as low as possible, and you want to have as much available credit as possible because that's going to help raise your credit score. So being a snob has to do with financial literacy. Another thing you can do to tap into your inner pretty girl snob is to take up some snobby hobbies. Ooh, that rhymes. Snobby hobbies. But some snobby hobbies that I like to do are yoga. I definitely associate yoga with being snobbish. I don't know why. I think maybe it's because when I think of like Lululemon and like all of these yoga clothes, or when I think about yoga studios, a lot of them are like pretty expensive. So I tend to associate yoga with being snobby, but you want to think in your mind like, okay, what hobbies do I think a lot of snobby people do? And are there any hobbies like that I'm interested in? Something else I think of is going to luxury coffee shops. So I like to do that. Yes, I am the type of person that will pay $10 for a latte because it makes me feel very snobby and bougie. But some other snobby hobbies are things like horseback riding. Tennis actually makes me think of snobs because I think of those super cute, like preppy outfits. I'm thinking of like golfing and tennis, and you know how you like wear a little dress and stuff. That's what I'm thinking of when I think of like these snobby hobbies. So maybe there's a certain sport, or maybe there are multiple sports that are usually a little bit more expensive. That's another thing, actually. When I think of a snobby lifestyle, I think of kind of the higher end gym memberships. So it doesn't have to be super expensive, but for example, maybe if you're thinking about getting a gym, maybe instead of Planet Fitness, maybe you can go up one tier and get like, I don't know, a $30 gym instead of a $10 gym. And by the way, I'm saying a $30 gym because I understand that most people watching this are not rich. So the way that I look at it is I would rather pay for the best that I can afford as opposed to being as cheap as possible, because if I want to live my best snobby lifestyle, I'm not going to skimp on myself, okay? So when it comes to my gym membership, no, I don't want a janky ass, raggedy ass gym. I don't want that. I want to go to a nice gym. I want to feel like I'm walking in there and it's clean, it smells good, there aren't a bunch of random guys like just hanging around lurking. And also, even when it comes to my living space, I would rather have a smaller house or a smaller apartment in a nicer neighborhood versus having a really big, giant house or apartment in a horrible neighborhood. So my environment really matters a lot to me. Another way that you can really tap into being a snob is you have to get rid of those inferiority complexes. I mean, if you even want to be a convincing snob, you gotta let go of these inferiority complexes or like these victim mentalities, this whole mindset of everybody hates me and nobody likes me, my skin tone holds me back, my blackness holds me back, me being a person of color that holds me back. You have to get rid of these inferiority complexes and comparisons, because otherwise you're not going to have that same level of audacity as a snob. You're not going to have that same level of confidence as snobs. And also, when I think of a snob, I think of a woman who has healthy delusion. So a lot of people talk about delusion as if it's a bad thing, but I actually think that being delusional can help you. Having a delusional mindset can actually help push you in the right direction. It can help you to reach your goals faster. Delusion helps people to have confidence. It helps you to have more audacity, more courage, more boldness. And so you want to make sure that your personality has a healthy dose of delusion to it, because yes, I do want to feel beautiful. So yes, I am going to tell myself that I look hot and that I look gorgeous, even if somebody else has clearer skin than me or their body is more in shape than mine. I don't really care about that because, like I said, being self-centered, so I'm not focused on what pretty qualities other women have that I don't have. I'm focused on what I do have, and I am using that to build up these quote-unquote delusions that are going to help me in the future. Every person in the past who has made a difference has been delusional at some point. Albert Einstein was considered delusional at one point. Elon Musk was considered delusional. Jeff Bezos was considered delusional. Everyone who started off and they didn't have anything to show for it yet, of course they were considered delusional in the beginning. So you have to remember, if you're going to tap into your inner snob, remember that there will always be people who think you are delusional. I take it as a compliment at this point. Another thing that I think of about snobs is snobby women are not social justice warriors. They're not carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. They're not constantly out protesting everything or arguing with everybody or calling out everybody and what they're doing 24/7. When I think of a snob, I think of someone who is out of touch with trauma. I think of someone who is out of touch with being at the bottom. She doesn't have that experience. She is living this snobby lifestyle. And by the way, if you're new to the Exoticals United community, if you are new to this YouTube channel, I like to talk about things from different perspectives. So this is a part of my Diabolicals United series, and I'm kind of talking about like these dark feminine qualities, or how to use the bad sides of yourself, or how to use the shadow side of yourself to create a better life. But that's something you want to do if you want to tap into your inner snob. You got to let go of your traumas. When I think of a snob, I think of a girl who does not have a chip on her shoulder. She is living her best life. You know, she expects the best. She has very high standards. She is putting herself first. I also think of a woman who is very organized with her time. So she schedules out when she's going to do her hair. You know, she's got a whole routine, like a deep conditioning routine. She's got her workout routines. She is on top of her beauty hobbies. I mean, this girl is really a go-getter when it comes to that beauty pedestal. That's another thing that I think of. When I think of a snob, I think of someone who's pretty. I mean, that's honestly what I think of. I think of someone who is considered beautiful and privileged. And so if somebody calls you a snob or they call you stuck up, I mean, I don't really take it as an insult, because like I said, I'd rather be considered snobby or stuck up as opposed to feeling like I'm at the bottom or something like that, or feeling like I'm a victim of everybody around me, or like I'm some loser getting stuffed into a locker. No. Another thing that you can do to help you access your inner snob is you can think of your favorite snobby archetypes. So when I think of my favorite snobs that I've seen throughout the media, I am thinking of the cheerleader. You know, I'm thinking of pretty cheerleaders that you see in movies and stuff, the cheer captains. I'm also thinking of mean girls, like the movie Mean Girls. And so that's something else. Like if somebody calls you a mean girl, you can just be like, oh my God, thank you. I love that movie. But no, when I think of a healthy version of a snob, or kind of taking on some of those darker qualities, I really do think of mean girls. I also think of femininity. I've never really heard of a man being called a snob. I've never heard of a fat, bald, short, unattractive man being called a snob. Anytime I see someone calling another person a snob, usually the person that they're calling a snob or snooty or stuck up, it is a person who has some sort of perceived social status or social power. And you know that this YouTube channel talks a lot about power tactics. I talk a lot about social tactics, sociology, psychology, dark psychology, all of that good stuff. So when I think of a snob, I think of someone who has social power and she knows it, and then she uses it to her advantage. Another positive quality of a snob is she is unapologetic. She doesn't give a fuck what you think of her outfit. She doesn't give a fuck what you think of her makeup. She is going to look how she wants. She's going to wear what she wants, and she's going to get what she wants. Because that's another aspect of this snobby archetype. She's got kind of this spoiled nature about her, almost like this princess mindset. So she treats herself as a princess. She views herself as a princess or a queen bee or whatever, and she will not tolerate people around her that don't treat her that way. Another thing that I think about when I think of a snob is someone who hangs out with elite people or someone who is influenced by the elites. So one of the ways that I like to tap into this in my everyday life is I like to read books from successful people. You know, I like to listen to different audiobooks. And sometimes in the past, I would watch TV shows where they showed a lot of snobby archetypes, kind of like Gossip Girl. That's another snobby archetype I can think of. Olivia Pope from Scandal, she is another kind of snobby archetype I can think of, kind of like this career woman. You know, she doesn't feel held back by any isms. She's kind of in almost like this dominatrix type of energy. She is very determined. She's outspoken. That's another aspect of a snob. I think of someone who is outspoken, someone who is bold. So not just bold with her fashion looks, but also bold in what she believes in. She's not afraid to make a YouTube video and talk about her passions. She's not afraid to get up on a podium and say the things she needs to say. She's not afraid of being seen. I think of a woman who's not afraid of being seen. She's not afraid of being heard. Those are some of the qualities I think of when I start to psychologically dissect what a snob actually is. Another thing I think of in terms of snobbiness is I think of someone who's very aloof. Someone who's very unbothered. So like you can say whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, you know, you can try to get her attention, but if she doesn't want to be bothered with you, she is going to remain unbothered. Her unbothered energy is on 10. She doesn't care about being liked. She doesn't really care so much about being the most popular. She could even be a mean girl. Like in a lot of cases, I see the snobby girl being called mean, but what I think of is a woman who does not try to shape and mold her personality to please others. So she's not a people pleaser. In order to be a snob, I feel like you kind of have to give up some of those people-pleasing tendencies because snobs have very good boundaries. Another quality that I have seen when I start psychoanalyzing what a snob is, I think of somebody who is sassy, somebody who's got a little bit of sass, you know, she has a little bit of attitude. So this could be expressed in the way that you walk, in the way you swing your hips, even in the way you flip your hair. I've noticed that some people, they get mad when a woman flips her hair because they feel like that's a snobby thing to do. Like, oh my God, you flipped your hair in my face, or, you know, you just walked past me and you didn't say hi. That's another thing. When I think of someone who's snobby, I think of someone who does not feel obligated to others. She doesn't have to say hi to everybody 24/7. So one thing that gets on my nerves is when people say, oh, you don't speak to nobody. And it's like, well, I'm not obligated to speak to anyone. If you really want to speak to me, you can say hi to me. But it's like, I am not feeling like I owe other people anything. So that's another psychological aspect of the snob that I can see. And that is something that you can take on for yourself. Another quality that I can see in the snob archetype is she's kind of bossy. You know, she's got this boss energy about her. I'm actually thinking of like Beyonce with the Diva song, or like with her Bow Down song, or, you know, some of her lyrics are very bossy, very diva-like, very snobby. To be honest, talking about bow down, that's an extremely snobby thing to say. So I think of a woman who's got a little bit of that cockiness, you know, like a good dose of cockiness, especially if she can back it up with her talent. That's an amazing thing to have. You want to be able to have the confidence to go with the talent, because confidence is really what makes life fun. I feel like confidence is really what makes you feel more carefree and unstoppable. So those are some other good qualities of the snob. Something else that I think of is You know how they call a snob uppity? When somebody says you're uppity, what they really mean is you're very bold. You know, like you're very audacious. How dare you say that? How dare you do that? You don't know how to stay in your place. But the thing about snobs is I actually think of a woman who is quite resilient, a woman who's very headstrong, a woman who's not going to let you put her at the bottom. You might put her at the bottom in your mind, but in her mind, oh, she is at the top. She is on the pedestal. She is living in her world. She's living her best life. And so when I think of a snob, I am actually thinking of someone who's very headstrong, someone who doesn't allow other people's negative comments to destroy her self-esteem. Because think about snobs. A lot of people talk badly about the snob, right? So I think of a woman who is used to people talking shit, and she doesn't let shit talking destroy her confidence. She doesn't let shit talking destroy kind of this bossy energy that she has. She walks in it. She stands in who she is. She stands 10 toes down. That's actually what I think of when it comes to some of the qualities of a snob that you can utilize for yourself. Another aspect of a snob that I think of is vanity. So somebody who is, you know, maybe she spends a lot of time taking selfies, maybe she likes to look in the mirror, and I guess the way that I would incorporate this shadow side of a snob is by looking at myself in the mirror, complimenting myself in the mirror, or spending a lot of time studying myself, like, hey, what makeup looks pretty on me? What skin color am I? What are my undertones? So I do believe that there's kind of this beauty and this vanity aspect of a snob. So others may perceive it as, oh, she thinks she's better. But I really do feel like there are some qualities of a snob that people really shouldn't be afraid to embrace every once in a while. Because if you enjoy looking in the mirror, I mean, that's a sign that you enjoy what you look like. You enjoy your beauty. You like looking at your beauty. Another thing about the snob archetype is snobs are very controversial. I feel like if you find a girl to be snobbish, you kind of have this love-hate relationship with the snob. So it's like you love the fact that she is so well put together and so confident and beautiful, but at the same time, you hate that. So you have kind of like this love-hate relationship, or like what men have with women, where it's like you love how she looks and stuff, but you hate the fact that you can't have her. You hate the fact that you can't get on her level. That is some snobbish energy right there. And another thing that I've noticed, though, is that snobs, they're actually very authentic. If you think of a snob, she doesn't care if you think she's a bitch. She doesn't care if you think that she has a superiority complex. She doesn't care if you think that she looks down on you. She is willing to let her bad qualities be shown. She is willing to let her bitchiness be shown. She is willing to be exposed for being shady. You know, think about the Snobs and like the Mean Girls movie and stuff like that. These are the types of girls where they don't really care about what you think of them. So there's actually an aspect of authenticity there, to the point where they have this attitude of take it or leave it. This is who I am. Take me or leave me. If you like me, hang out with me. If you don't like me, get out of my life. So that's actually a very powerful energy to take on. That's a very powerful mindset. I mean, yes, snobs are very polarizing, but that's also the same thing that makes them magnetic. And so that's why in this Diabolicals United series, we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about some more of these kind of diabolical archetypes and how we can incorporate those things into our psychology and kind of whip it out of our psychological arsenal. Another thing that I think of when I think of a snob is I think of someone who is privileged. Like, if you're a snob, I don't think of a snob and somebody who's underprivileged. Like, no, those two seem to be opposites in my mind. Like, when I'm thinking of a snob, I'm thinking of somebody privileged. I'm thinking of someone who maybe she's been spoiled. She hasn't encountered as many traumas. You know, she doesn't have as many limiting beliefs. That's another thing I think of when I think of a snob. She doesn't have as many limiting beliefs, and that's why in your mind, she might sound delusional. Like, what do you mean you think you're the cutest girl in school? Like, are you serious? Like, what, Regina George? Like, what do you mean you think you're the queen bee? Like, who do you think you are? I've noticed that a snob has the tendency to give people this reaction of, who do you think you are? But in order to give people that reaction, you have to have a hell of a lot of confidence. I mean, you have to really be owning kind of this boss energy or like this boss mindset. Another thing that I think of when I think of someone snobby is I think of someone who is good at articulating themselves. I actually think of someone who is more educated, someone who's a little bit smarter, someone who is better at manipulation tactics. So you can't really manipulate them. I think of somebody who is not easy to manipulate, Because if I think of the snob archetype, or kind of like what I've seen in the media, generally speaking, snobs are not that easy to manipulate. You have to be very, very sneaky in order to manipulate the snob. And then if you do manipulate her and she finds out, oh, she's definitely going to confront you. That's another thing I've noticed about snobs. They're not afraid of confrontation. They're not afraid of people disliking them. And so that snob energy, that shadow self, if you've got a little bit of snob in there, then those are just some of the qualities that you can actually tap into to help you. But what do you ladies think? Have you ever been called a snob? And if so, do you like to embrace that side of yourself sometimes? What do you ladies think? Let me know in the comment section, and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.